Hi, good afternoon. I'm Michael Wright and I'm the canine behaviourist. Um, I've not been on for a while, but I thought I'd talk a little bit about the safety of our dogs, particularly when we're out walking and in strange areas. Um, those of you that have watched these before on YouTube perhaps will be aware that I have a new dog, another rescue after Ziggy passed. And behind me on the screen you can see Clint. Clint's a lurcher, and Clint was recovered by the police from a traveller site. We fostered him for a while, then we adopted him. So he's come from a difficult background. He's probably been used for breeding, and because he's a lurcher, he needs a little bit of special um, care when we're out walking. Now, many people keep dogs like Clint permanently on a lead, on one of these extendable leads, which most people know I don't like at all. Mainly because lurchers are bred for hare coursing, chasing small creatures. So people are petrified that because they've got such a strong prey drive that you can't train them, you can't teach them recall or whatever. Well, I would beg to differ. I believe any dog can be trained. It's just that some are harder to train than others by virtue of their breeding and their DNA. So Clint is off the lead pretty much all the time when he's out walking in the woods. As you can see here, this is from a walk this morning. However, with the best will in the world, although his recall is something I practice every single day, and that I recommend everybody does that every day. You must practice this wherever you walk them. His recall is probably about 98%, which for a lurcher pretty astounding, really. However, with the best will in the world, if a deer runs across him, he's going to chase the deer. Now, he likes to chase squirrels up trees and whatever. I don't deny him that pleasure. It's one of the things that dogs enjoy doing. He can't catch them. You can't see from that picture, but he always wears a muzzle. The muzzle is there for safety because he's a lurcher. It protects him from making a mistake and maybe hurting another dog because he gets a bit excited. It just keeps him out of trouble, and it's good for everybody, really. It doesn't bother him, and it doesn't deny him the pleasure of his walks. So, safety. Now, Clint, when we were out walking 2 or 3 weeks ago, a small muntjac deer literally ran right under Clint's nose. Now, of course, Clint gave chase pretty much immediately, and because he's a lurcher, one of the fastest dogs on the planet, he can go from naught to invisible very quickly, and he did this, and it took me 3/4 of an hour to recover him. Now, bear in mind he's trained really well to the whistle, but he was so close and so involved in the chase of this deer, he wasn't listening to me. But I managed to recover him probably 3/4 of an hour later, and he'd literally run himself to a standstill. He eventually appeared in a road, fortunately a quiet road, just up from where I was standing, and I'd been driving around, I'd been trying to find him, and I was having no chance whatsoever. And he was just standing there. So I recovered him, got him in the car, got him home, and he was in quite poor shape, really. He got a few cuts and bruises where he'd been rushing through the undergrowth. So I took him to the vet, got him checked over, and he was fine. But a little later, he started urinating black urine. Now, I come from a military background. I'm an ex-naval medic. And black urine often means there's blood or something like that in the system. So I rang the vet, and the vet said, he was fairly kind because there was something to worry about here. He said, no, it's okay. We need to keep him on very light duties, not walk him for the next week or so, feed him lots and lots of fluid. And basically, lurchers and greyhounds can suffer the same thing. If they over-exercise and over-exert themselves, they can start to break down their muscle fibers, which are then flushed through the kidneys, and they can go into kidney failure, and they can die. It's a very serious condition, and it's fairly well known by vets. So fortunately, Clint recovered fully from this, but it got me to thinking, what else can I do besides training him and continually pounding into him on our walk and really reaffirming the recall? What else can I do to maybe make it safe when he may come across the deer like that again? Now, as I said, I don't like keeping dogs on the lead, but I take my responsibilities very seriously for dogs. So I decided to look into tracking devices. Now the tracker isn't like a shock collar like that. The clues in the title. It allows you to track where your dog is, and it should do live tracking. So I invested in a tracker, and in the picture, hopefully you can see it. Bear with me. Yeah, in the picture that should appear in a second or two, you'll see Clint modelling his tracker, and it's the little black and white thing on the collar there. Now this tracker allows me to monitor his walks as we walk and record them, which is quite nice. It means that I've got a good idea how long we're walking and how far we're walking, and it even looks and gives you an estimate of what sort of calories that might be used, and how you're doing with this fitness. So all that's good, but the main thing is I know where he is. It will also do live tracking. So I can show you a map of what it shows you really. So after a walk, you'll see something like that, and that tells me exactly where we walked, how many paces Clint's done, and that walk is Clint, of course. It has an extra benefit for me that when I'm out in a wooded area that is new to me, and Clint's with me, it's a pretty good GPS. This particular one uses the 2G network. So if you've got a 2G network and your phone's connected, it's very effective, and it's fairly accurate as well. A lot of people struggle with these sorts of things, mainly because they don't read the instructions and they don't set them up correctly. But this has proven to be very good. It also, as a sideline, really is very good from the point of view of training. This allows me to actually record voice commands and any other noise I wish it to emit. I had toyed with putting the whistle I use, and Clint comes very well to the whistle. However, I then figured that maybe that's not such a good idea, because if you imagine this is sitting basically behind his ear. So if the whistle goes off, yes, it might startle him a little bit, but it won't actually help because he won't really know where it's coming from. He comes to the whistle, and if it's in his ear, that's likely to confuse him. However, using voice commands is a slightly different thing and very useful thing. So when I use a command with a dog, I'm not aggressive with it. I've talked about how we talk to dogs and how we give commands in the past. A lot of people have the Dad's Army Sergeant Wilson approach. So would you mind awfully? Now I believe you have to be fairly positive with the command. So if I would tell Clint to come, for instance, I would use his name first of all to get his attention, then the command. So I would go simply, Clint, come, but in a very firm tone so he knows specifically and he knows that you mean it. Now, with this thing on his neck, it's slightly different. I want to shock him out of what he's doing a little bit. So if he's chasing a deer, I want him to be a little bit like that, you know. So his command in his ear is still Clint, come, which is the one he knows, but it's much fiercer. It says, Clint, come. bum, fairly strong. And I've had this on him for probably 3 weeks or so now, and as a training tool, it's proving to be very good. It's actually strengthening his recall even more. His recall is getting better and better. So basically, the command in his ear, it sort of makes him start a little bit. He then stops, and I've done this in the woods with him where I can see him and he's got to be a fair distance, and you can see him just sort of start slightly, and he'll start to look where that might be coming from. Then you back it up with a good old sharp blow on the whistle, and he comes back like a bullet. Fantastic. I had the ultimate test a couple of days ago when indeed another muntjac ran across his path and he gave chase, and blow me, by using that command and using the whistle, I broke him out of the chase of the muntjac and he came back, which is pretty impressive stuff. So I researched these for a long while. I don't just buy any old rubbish. So this particular one is called the Paw Fit. Now I'm not recommending it to you, but all I'm saying is I've used it so far, and it's proved to be pretty good, really. It cost me about £55, and because it uses the 2G network, you pay a monthly fee, which is about £4. And for me, that gives you quite a strong peace of mind. So I know that if I don't manage to keep him with me at all times, at least I know where he is. And when I flick this across to live tracking, it does exactly that. I can see his movements, and it updates every couple of seconds or so. I can see precisely where he is. So in the instance where we chased a deer and he was gone for 3/4 an hour, I suspect I could have got to him a lot quicker simply by virtue of knowing exactly where he was. So I'd recommend them, depending on what sort of dog you've got. Okay, I'll just get rid of those now. All right. So that's basically tracking the dog, and for me it's been a bit of a revelation, and for the type of dog I've got, it's a very good idea. Now that's pretty much all I want to say about that. But I do want to talk a little bit more about what we do with our dogs, particularly when we go out walking with them. I often meet people, particularly when we're out in the woods, we're miles from roads, we've got a perfect environment for your dog to enjoy nature, enjoy running and having fun. There are quite a few areas where I walk where there are more and more restrictions being put on dogs. You've got to have them on a short lead, you mustn't let them, etc., etc. So I found a place where, and again Clint's demonstrating it, there's river walks, there's lots of forest, there's no restrictions on him whatsoever, and he's able to get out and run and play and enjoy himself. But again, because he's a lurcher, I don't let him run around like a lunatic. So he's off lead pretty much all the time, enjoying himself. But I have control most of the time. So because he's a lurcher and he has a tendency to want to chase small things, something that he's improving, but that will never go away. That's hardwired in his DNA. When I see dogs approaching, I'll put him on his lead. Then I'll gauge how things are, and I'll let the dogs meet if the other owners are amicable to that. There may be reasons why they don't want to meet other dogs. And if all is well, then Clint's let off the lead so he can socialise, maybe run around and play and that sort of thing. So that's great. But I still meet people that never let their dogs off the lead. And they do this for a variety of reasons. A lot of it, I hate to say it, is almost laziness. Excuse me. To get a dog to learn what's required of of them from their humans, we have to teach them, and we have to work at it, and we have to practice it, and it's not easy. We have to work at it, and many people either can't be bothered to actually put that time in, or indeed they may have physical limitations. They might be elderly, they might not be capable of doing what's required. So I understand, I get that, but most of the time, if you take a dog on, you've got to be prepared to put the effort into giving that dog the best life you possibly can. And the best life you possibly can doesn't involve keeping it on the lead forever or strapping it to you while you go cycling. It's got to be off, socializing, meeting, enjoying its life, in my opinion. So I'll give you one or two examples. I see so many people, again, they're out in the woods, they've got a couple of dogs, and the dogs are on the extendable lead. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first reason, I say, oh, well, he's got no recall, and he's a terrier, and he'll go down holes, and he doesn't respond to coming. Once he's gone, and whatever. Well, they're all the sayings for me of people that just aren't putting effort in. I came across a couple today, perfectly nice couple, probably late 60s, early 70s. I've just turned 65 myself. And they had two border terrier crosses, quite old guys. And when I say old, they were probably around 12, 13, 14 years old, both on extending leads. And we were coming at an intersection, so I'm walking along with the big guy, and these two are coming alongside, pulling on their leads. And because Clint has a muzzle on, and I've got him on the lead because he's a small dog, just in case. It tends to worry people. People think because you've got a muzzle, it means your dog is aggressive, and it's not. There are multiple reasons, pretty good reasons why Clint has a muzzle, as I've discussed earlier. So I always call out and say, it's okay, he's friendly, not a problem. And I explain to him why he's on a lead, because he's a lurcher and that sort of stuff, which is great. However, these two were walking up to me, and the husband, he calls at me, oh, well, we've got to be careful because my dogs will bite your dog. I went, really? Oh yes, they can be quite aggressive. Now, I try to help people, so I stopped, and they were quite happy with that. And I said, well, it's okay. Allow your dogs to approach. I said, I'll keep an eye on things, and so I had Clint next to me, and I've done this so many times with many dogs over the years. So I look at these dogs. I had Clint, and I shortened Clint's lead, and I crouched really down low, and then I just chat to the owners, and I allow the dogs to come a little bit closer, and while saying to the owners, just relax and just let them interact a little bit. And I'm keeping an eye on things. So if these dogs are showing a real aggression or anything, I'm going to step in and do something about it. So what happens? These two dogs come and greet me first of all because they like people, and these two are going to bite Clint. They both walk up to Clint, and they've been held on the lead, and one of them's straining a little bit with his paws up. His body language is actually very relaxed. He clearly wants to say hello. So I say it's okay, and so he says hello to Clint. And we chat for 5 or 6 minutes with these dogs in very close proximity to Clint. Bear in mind, Clint's a big lurcher. He's got a muzzle on his face, which worries other dogs because they can't quite gauge what's happening. Dogs are very geared to body language. They like to see a dog's expression and its face and its eyes, those sorts of things. Can't really do that with a muzzle. And we had this little interaction. They said, oh no, we never let the dogs off. And these dogs are 12, 13, 14 years of age. We never let them off the lead. So in this beautiful place where the dogs could have a lovely time, never let off the lead. Why? Because they're petrified they won't be able to get them back. And of course, they're meant to be aggressive. They're none of these things. I've talked many times over the years with people, and I've written in my blog on my website, and I've talked about labeling dogs, and we do that an awful lot. Our dog is reactive, our dog is this, our dog is that, and there's usually not a lot of further thought that goes into, if the dog or your dog has some sort of an issue, why don't we try, and I mean really try, to do something about it? Often we avoid things, we keep our dogs away from this, we keep away from that, but we never actually work hard enough, again, in my humble opinion, hard enough to help the dog. I mean, some dogs can live for 15, 20 years. Who knows, depending on what breed they are. So surely we really ought to be putting ourselves out and putting the time in. And I know there'll be some people that will rail at these comments, and they'll say, well, I do the best for my dog and whatever. Well, yeah, you might do, but we shouldn't give up on them and just say, no, this is too difficult, and it's my dog's terrified. The amount of dogs that have been labelled, I've dealt with over the years, and the view that people have on them, and the view their owners have on them is actually quite erroneous. They're doing the dogs a disservice, So if in doubt, ask for some advice. There are, of course, one or two dogs out there. There's always exceptions to the rule that are very difficult to help indeed. But most you can do something with if you have the commitment. Most people love their dogs. I know they do, but love isn't always enough. We have to really do work hard to actually to help them. So these two dogs, there wasn't an awful lot wrong with them, but I can tell you that they'll have spent all of their lives stuck on a lead, not being able to socialise properly, and that's why they've got this view, oh, well, they're a bit aggressive and they'll bite and whatever. They might well have done. But all I'm saying is, if you've got dogs with those sorts of issues, you should go out of your way to try and help them as soon as you possibly can. You should never accept them, and you should never just accommodate them and change your behaviour so you keep your dog out of those sorts of problems and those sorts of troubles. That's okay, but you're not giving them the best life. So that's all I wanted to say about that, really. So I think that's it for now. I think I've rambled on enough. If anybody has any questions, if and when anybody gets to see this, whether it's on YouTube or on Facebook, feel free to go onto my website and feel free to go onto my Canine Behaviours page. There's a question and answer page I've put up on there. So you can ask me some questions, and as long as they're not too complex that might require a full consultation, I'll endeavour to answer them for you. Now, I'll just say one last thing. I finally got round to writing a book, which is now published on Amazon, and it's called For the Love of Dog, and it's been written from the point of view of what our dogs mean to us. Okay, so I've written about all the dogs I've experienced in my life. There's been quite a few, and what they've meant to me and my family. I'm not talking about the cutesy, but the impact they have on our lives. I also got a few people to give me their stories as well, and I've included those. I've taken quite a lot of time to write about canine behaviour issues and common stuff you might come across, you might need answers to. I've talked about some training, basic training, puppy training, those sorts of things. I've included a little bit about the law, That's an important thing we really ought to need to understand. I've also put a first aid course in there. I'm next Royal Navy medic, and I've been teaching doggy first aid for a good few years. I don't really do too much of that now. There are so many people doing that. So I concentrate on the behavioural stuff and the training of our dogs now. So I think that's all I've got to say for now. Thank you very much for listening, or thank you for taking a look when you swing by YouTube or Facebook. I'll pop up again at some stage, and I look forward to rambling again in the future. Okay, thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Bye for now.